1075 The Game Podcasting is sponsored by Modern Exterminating, a family-oriented company. Professional, honest, and dependable pest control solutions. We're your one-stop shop for all pests. We do it all. We know what bugs you. Visit us online at pestfreesc.com. That's pestfreesc.com.
Yours truly was just upstairs in a meeting, and we were talking about a couple of things, and then lo and behold, we find out that MiLaysia Fulwiley has entered the transfer portal. So we're going to jump right into that. I honestly do not know a whole lot yet. I don't know that any of us know a whole lot yet, other than the most basic fact. I mentioned earlier in the week that nothing really surprises me anymore. And I'll hold true to that. It's going to be a disappointment. It's going to leave some fans angry. And listen, entering the portal doesn't necessarily mean you're leaving the program. It typically does. And we'll reach out to a couple of beat writers and see what we can do to scramble and get some folks on that were not originally scheduled to be with us. We only have one guest scheduled today officially, and that's Coach Stuart Lake, who's going to join us in a half hour to talk about last night's game and look ahead to tonight and tomorrow out in College Station. But, again, Elijah, I can't say I'm surprised. And we can think back to a couple of games recently where it felt like, maybe Dawn had a look on her face of not necessarily, it was sort of a mix of things, kind of a frustration and a questioning, when it came to just some of the things MiLaysia was doing. There was an inconsistency in her play despite a consistency in her role. As the sixth woman of the year in the Southeastern Conference. I mean, she'd been coming off the bench the last 2 years. We know what she can do. I mean, she had a heck of a game against Maryland, but then kind of maybe faded a little bit in a relative sense. Had a couple of good games. I mean, the bench came back pretty well against Texas. Scored 30-something points against Texas. And they had a good night against Connecticut, all things considered. They just,
for the most part.
Yeah, just nobody collectively had enough to beat UConn. But this is going to sting even a little bit more because she played high school basketball 10 minutes from where she plays college basketball. And, those kind of things hit home, no pun intended, a little harder. Not that you want to lose anybody. But I don't think we should be too surprised by this. Again, disappointment and shock and anger can all be very different emotions, and they can all be true at once. But I don't know that surprise or shock should be at the top of the list here. If you've been paying attention to what's going on and you look at the kind of player that just came in and Tanaya Latson from FSU, and I can't say I'm overly surprised. And now we just kind of see what happens next and what any potential conversations have already been held were like, what any near-term conversations may be like if there's an attempt to keep her in the program or if those attempts have already been made, Elijah, and this is the end result.
Yeah, I think the surprise here, because I think there is legitimate surprise that it's MiLaysia Fulwiley who is the one who transferred. I don't think the shock doesn't necessarily come from what happened in terms of a player on this team transferring because of the influx of guards and potentially another addition if Gianna Neepkins comes and visits and loves it and decides to commit. It's a loaded guard room, so you figured somebody would be the one to go. I think the who is the story here, and normally in an instance like this, because they're, not a lot of programs in any sport have this much depth to it and recruit at this high of a level. But let's take Alabama football, for instance, a similar program who's always the best in recruiting. it's not a surprise when somebody who wasn't going to get out onto the field as much as maybe throughout her 2 years here, you've seen an interesting dynamic between Dawn and MiLaysia. And I think, there's a lot that Dawn sees in her when she watches MiLaysia play, and she holds MiLaysia to a very high standard. And I think both of them understood how beneficial the coach-player relationship was for the two of them. All of that combined into her leaving before, I would say prematurely, because I think, the expectation was she was going to be here the entire time. That is what makes this so shocking and surprising. Because even though, the raw basketball point of it makes a ton of sense. You expected to be a starter by the time you were at least a junior. I think Tahina Pau coming back for last year was the reason she wasn't a starter this past season. But then with Raven coming back, adding Tania Latson, it makes total basketball sense to go where you're going to start. You only get 4 years to maximize what you're going to be able to make in the NIL space, being able to elevate your star as much as humanly possible so you can get drafted at a higher spot. She's going to get drafted regardless.
Yeah,
this isn't going to make her break what her WNBA trajectory is going to be, because it's not like she's going to play, sorry to pick on Eastern Michigan, not like she's going to play at Eastern Michigan, right? She's going to play where she's going to be featured and going to be on TV a lot and is still going to be a highly coveted WNBA prospect. That part is still going to happen. But it is really, for her, maybe the right decision to just get on the floor for as many minutes as possible. Yes, you're still getting starter-esque minutes at South Carolina, but to have the offense feature you, to be on a team where you are the fulcrum of the offense and you get to flex what you can do as the star on the team, makes a ton of sense. That makes total basketball sense. It's just the history and the story behind MiLaysia Fulwiley making this a larger story than it would really be anywhere else if key reserve transfers from championship caliber team.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, and I agree with you. And like I said, in my open, I think this is different. And it's all going to be dependent upon someone's point of view. But like I said, it's different because she played high school ball 10 minutes from where she plays college ball. That's the difference. And it's not that you would feel great if Tessa were in the portal.
Right. Yeah. It
because
would
she
still be
played,
upsetting.
1,000 and something miles away. It still would hurt, but this is different. And with the amount of time that has passed, and I just scrolled under the Gamecock Central Twitter. I was just looking real quick, and I say, oh, that's why she played badly in the title game. No,
I don't think she.
No.
Honestly, I think she fully expected to come back and play here, and then when Raven announced she's coming back and Tania Latson came on, and maybe they have a good feeling about Neepkins, probably is what did it. I think that has more of an impact. Things that happened after the final buzzer against Connecticut, I don't think there was no indication that she would leave, regardless what happened in that championship game. That didn't make or break anything in terms of the decision. I think what happened was she would have to wait another year, and it's something we and you have talked about too, and several of our previous shows. That's a tough ask for someone like MiLaysia Fulwiley, who can start anywhere and be the focal point of the offense wherever she goes, to come off the bench for a third straight year.
Yeah.
Again, you only have 4 years to play college basketball.
And I agree with you. Let me play devil's advocate. Okay.
Yes.
Not in a sense of pushing back upon you, because I think what you said is probably most accurate. But let me be the person that says, well, what about competition? Why didn't she go out there and earn a starting job? Why didn't she beat those other girls out? How do we know she's not going to start? Why didn't she try to give it another go? And those could be fair questions.
They can.
She can earn the starting nod. She can display to her head coach, who was perhaps one of the 2 or 3 best female point guards to ever play the sport, that she can protect the basketball better, that she can play within her own structure better, and that she can be counted upon to play those opening minutes of games relative to come off the bench, to help set the pace. things that they probably would have liked her to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that she has not at this level for that coach. And let's face it, y'all, you know what the level is. You know the level of the coach. You know the level of the program she's built. And it's not to say MiLaysia is failing. Again,
No.
sixth woman of the year. She could start here. And wherever she goes, she will be a starter. I would think that's 99.9% sure without even knowing where she's going to go play.
Exactly.
Right?
She's going to start.
Even if she went to Connecticut.
Yeah. They would find a way for her to start. She'd just slide into the Paige Becker's role.
Yeah. But there are holes in the game that her head coach has identified. And if if you're not filling those holes, if you will, then she has to go do something about it. No player can be bigger than the program.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Dawn's built. So, again, I'd love to know what those conversations were like, because part of the conversation at the beginning of the week with Tanaya Latson was, oh, hey, she played AAU with Ashlyn Watkins and MiLaysia Fulwiley, and she went to high school with Raven Johnson. Cool. She knows everybody. It's going to be great. Guess not.
And my one response, I guess, to anybody who says, well, maybe you don't know if she doesn't start, I'll respond, you respond to that with this. Do you bring in somebody who just got done scoring 25 points per game and led the nation in scoring, and as prolific a scorer as Tanaya Latson is, to come off the bench?
No.
You normally don't.
Does not feel like that. So your bench players, she had the fewest minutes of the ones that were most counted upon anyway. I'm not trying to take any shots at Maddie or Sakima or Miriam or anybody else, but in terms of those three big, the bench was deep, but and before Ashlyn got hurt, and there were, she and Fagan could maybe switch some roles from time to time or something like that, but it was Tessa, MiLaysia, and Joyce coming off the bench with big minutes and big numbers.